Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another animation analysis video. And before I even say anything about what's on the screen, if my voice sounds a little weird, your boy currently has a fever. Last time I took the temp, we were cooking at about 101 degrees. So, yeah, I am definitely a little bit under the weather right now, but obviously I still wanted to make this video, and I cannot wait to rest my voice after this because I have been on a phone call for a couple hours. But anyway, we are going to discuss the brand new essays for Android 21, and if it sounds like I'm not excited about some of this stuff, that's not true. I just feel terrible right now. So, this was definitely a Dokkan Fest that I did not see coming. Obviously, I don't think anybody really was like, Android 21 is definitely next. I did see a couple of things where people were saying because of some of the returning events and whatnot that we might end up getting a new Android 21, excuse me, but obviously it's really cool because of course she is a Dokkan Fest, and not to mention, right, obviously, you know, coming right after the Super Dragon Ball Heroes stuff, she is, of course, another crossover unit, so that is pretty cool. And not to mention, she is actually the first 200% leader for Boo, for LR Super Boo, the AGL one, so that's pretty cool. But let's go ahead and take a look at her actual animations here. Of course, as per usual, we're going to watch through them one time, and then we will take a look at them. You're going to hear my voice crack a lot in this video, so I apologize in advance. But obviously, we have the side banner unit, which funny enough is quite literally just another Android 21, which I was really confused when I first saw this because I was like, wait, does she start off in Evil 21 form? What's going on here? But obviously, that is not the case. This is just a completely separate unit. So then, we move on to the base form, Super. And I gotta say, her supers are honestly pretty cool. I think overall, right, and you know, we'll kind of dissect it as we go through. I think overall my kind of thoughts on this is that like the attacks, except for this part, this is pretty cool, are like not anything too insane, I suppose, in terms of like grandiose scale. But by golly, the super attack for that one, this transformation's kind of like whatever. It's kind of just eh. It's not terrible, but it's not like great either. This super attack though, wow. They did a very, very good job with it. And I have to say, another thing that I think that they did, besides obviously the fact that, of course, all of these animations are different attacks from fighters, right? If you're familiar with the game, then you would know that these are different supers that Android 21 has. The cool thing about this unit is the fact that I'm pretty sure that they animated this in the frame rate of fighters. Because looking at these animations, I'm sorry, you're going to hear it crack so much. When it comes to these animations, I swear it's not the normal Dokkan frame rate that they usually animate at, and it looks closer to the fighter's frame rate. I could definitely be wrong on that, but I feel like that's what my eyes are telling me. So that is really interesting if that's the case. However, it is pretty cool because there are definitely some moments in here where you can see that they kind of try and replicate the sort of style of the 3D models that basically, like, you know, fighters uses for their characters, especially on the base form super for 21. You can really tell, like here especially, right, it looks like the aesthetic of the model, so that is pretty cool. Alright, so let's start off with the side banner 21. This animation right here, kind of whatever, to be honest with you. It's nothing too crazy. She literally just teleports in, right? They do have the hair move a little bit, which is nice. And then she basically just moves her arm to the side before giving a little bit of a hee hee hee. And yeah, there really isn't too much to this animation, right? I like at least that they have a very nice looking aura, and it's cool that her hair moves with the aura, but it's nothing insane, right? It's very basic animation. So then we have the super attack, obviously, where, of course, we have Android 21 standing there. The kind of asset for her standing there in the beginning is definitely a little bit eh. but of course it's kind of supposed to be that she's sort of far away. But I do like this transition here. I think they do a good job of transitioning from this to this when she's still far away enough that you don't notice the like asset change. And then obviously once it gets really close, it looks very high quality, and then of course it changes to the punch, right, which also looks very good too. And then of course you have her punch towards the screen, and that looks nice as well. I do like as well the little bit of the blur effect that they got going on here, right? This looks kind of weird out of context, but as you can see, right, obviously you know, kind of having her blur to move forward I think is a great idea. And not to mention, I think that this essay really captures that sort of manic side of this form of 21, right? Obviously approaching like this, like a crazy person, and then basically just slamming the enemy down into the rocks below before teleporting over here. And that was a long time until the card art appeared. I feel like a lot of the time recently we've been seeing the card arts pop up like almost immediately. This bad boy took a fat minute to get on screen, and then of course we have the energy ball, you know, with 21 again, hair moving and all that good stuff, tail moving, which is nice. But then of course it basically just explodes there. This animation is okay, right? Obviously I'm not spending too much time on it because of course I want to focus on the main unit, but it's alright. It's certainly not the best side banner unit that I've ever seen, but it's certainly not the worst side banner unit that I've ever seen. So I think it's kind of like whatever, right? It's just okay. Alright, so we now have 21 in the scientist form, where they have a little bit of a start again. I've been talking about this in a lot of my animation analysis videos. It kind of feels like they're trying to almost do like a mini intro animation, which, you know, they kind of have 21 stand there for a moment before, you know, getting ready to fight, where obviously they have it zoom backwards and then of course zooming forward. This is like, it's alright, I suppose. I think they do a good enough job of making it feel impactful. There is still some frames in between that certainly give it a little bit more life than just, you know, some simple like assets basically just like stretching and smearing and whatever. Like, this is like a much better version than, ironically enough, in the last video we took a look at Vegeta, right? Obviously Vegeta had a similar barrage of attacks like this. Of course 21's is a reference to the game, but 21's is definitely a lot more fluid looking, right, than Vegeta's, especially with that weird aura that they did. But this is a pretty cool transition, I will say. They have her lift her arms up, and then they have her transition into this, and it gets so close to the screen so quickly that you don't really notice the transition. As well, you can definitely tell from this shot right here that they were clearly trying to replicate that FIGHTERZ style, right? This looks very much so like a 3D model, even though obviously, you know, it's just PNGs that are slapped together to make this, which I think is cool, right? It's a nice little reference to the game. The aura looks really good. And then, of course, we have 21's card art. Very, very nice card art, by the way. I'm going to be interested to see what her actual SSR art is, because honestly, like, I swear that art could be SSR art. But either way, we have 21 fly forward and basically just bop into the opponent. And again, this is another reference from FIGHTERZ from one of her attacks, where, like, when she's dashing between, right, it's alright. It's nothing too crazy. I mean, it does a good enough job replicating the game. But of course, this end shot is where this really peaks here. I like that they have this, right? First of all, I will say the only thing about this animation, it's weird because I feel like 21 looks really good here, right? I like how they kind of have her hair like super crazy and flying up in the sky, and they have her lab coat flapping around, right? Again, this is awesome that they animated all these little details, because these definitely could have been things that they just didn't do. Regardless, though, this kick does not really have a lot of impact, right? I know it has that little bit of like the effect, but it really kind of feels a little lame. And I kind of wonder if the reason why for that is because they don't really have 21's leg move out. I'm going to assume that this is just something from FIGHTERZ that it looks like this, and that's why it just looks kind of weird and that she doesn't actually like kick out to push them into the ground, but it still looks a little janky. This is a pretty cool transition, though, I will say. I definitely like this a lot better than just cutting. They zoom into the cloud of dust, and then as you can see, right, it dissipates, or you kind of go inside the dust to then see the attack. that is awesome. I wish the Dokkan would do more transitions like that, because in my mind, that is so much cooler, so much fluid, and just a lot, you know, more fun on the eyes to have a transition like that, rather than just, you know, cutting between the scenes, right? Now, obviously, this looks really good, right? With 21 charging the attack, right? Having the glasses have the little glint on it. I will say the only unfortunate thing about this animation, right? I think the zoom in is okay. I definitely think it could have used a little bit more, like going from this asset to this one. I feel like there definitely could have been something else in there to make that transition look a little bit better. And then, obviously, once we get to this, it looks cool, but then we have this disgusting fade. Like, I noticed this the first time I watched the animation. I was like, ew, that's rancid. Dokkan is much better than this when it comes to their animations nowadays. They're long past the point where they need to fade. That definitely seems like just cutting corners or being lazy, because they could have easily had her just turn. Now, if this is something in Fighters, then again, right, if it looks like this in the game, then I suppose, you know, that I'll take the L on that one. But I can't imagine that it necessarily looks like this in the game. But you can correct me in the comments for sure on that one. Nonetheless, though, this end shot does look really good. I like the little bit of the zoom out that they have here for how it actually zooms out after 21 is kind of shown from the side here, right? The transition, too, to the other asset is really well done, right? Because obviously we have this big one, and then it transitions from here to here, and you don't really notice it too much when you're watching the animation, right? And then it, you know, just looks like this big beam explosion, or this ki blast, rather. And then, of course, you have the very cool explosion effect here, which is ripped right out of Fighters, and it looks great. And it's cool, too. They have the little, like, almost dramatic finish-esque end here, too, to this animation, when they have, like, the whole screen is, like, covered in dust and debris, and everything explodes, right? And then it goes, dramatic finish, right? It very looks akin to that, so that's pretty cool. Alright, then we have her transformation animation, right? I'm gonna be honest, this animation is just okay at best. So first of all, right, the little walk up that she does, right, the walking is fine, but then they just have her like immediately go from the walking pose to this frame. Definitely a little bit awkward. They should have had one more thing in between there to kind of like have her transition her feet a little bit better. But then they immediately cut to, you know, zooming in on her, which again, you know, we don't like cuts as much in this house for sure. We have the bottom half of her with the coat fluttering, which is a nice little touch. But that cut is just so rancid. That cut going from the bottom half to the top half that quickly, that to me, like, listen, I always hate to say that, like, Dokkan, oh, they're cutting corners and, like, you know, they're, you know, just like skipping steps, or there should be more frames in here, because obviously I'm not the Dokkan devs and I don't know what's going through their mind, but like this one out of everything quite literally just looks like they got lazy, right? And I don't want to say that for a fact, because obviously I don't know that for a fact. I'm just spitballing, but at the same time, like, bro, you're telling me this was the best that you could do for transitioning in between these frames? The least that they could have done is, if they didn't want to animate the whole thing of it like going completely up her body like that, they should have just had a little bit of like a blur effect, right? Kind of an anime-esque sort of thing when they're doing this for a character and they don't want to show like the character's full thing, or you know, they basically transition in the way of it just blurs up to the top, rather than, you know, having it just be a cut in between if they're not showing the entire form of somebody. So definitely a little bit disappointing on that front. I will say also the way that the assets here look a little bit like strange on the shading. It's weird, because I almost feel like they were trying to implement the fighter style here, but also keeping it looking like a Dokkan asset as well, which is definitely a little bit weird, because I feel like the other ones before looked more like Fighters models rather than Dokkan assets. So it's just kind of uncanny to see a little bit of a mix of the two, to be honest. This was also her Dokkan Fest teaser as well. But we then have obviously the screen fade to white, and a little bit of a transition to her powering up, which is, again, really nothing crazy. It is a very, very basic transition. I would rather they do this than just have it like cut. But honestly, maybe with the aura just appearing there and then zooming out would have honestly been a little bit better in this case. However, I'm sure it was probably just so they didn't have to animate the aura like flaring up, right? That way they can already just have it on screen cooking. And then they have the white flash on screen once again. And I will say the aura here is incredibly well done. This is also just like a weird shot. I'm going to assume that this is probably from the story, right? Because obviously 21, the lab coat one, is a different character from Majin 21. And you can correct me on that because I have actually... I don't think I ever finished the fighter story. I started playing it and I don't think I ever finished it. Or maybe I just don't remember this particular scene, but it's definitely a little bit like, I don't know, it's just very basic, right? I mean, like, I don't really know what else you need for a transformation animation, but it's kind of funny to say, like, she's just standing there, basically, right? Which, like, I get it. That's how power-ups in Dragon Ball work a lot of the time, but... You know, panning between the different shots of her is pretty cool. I will say, though, cutting to the zoomed out shot here before they zoom back in is definitely a little bit of a weird one. I kind of think that maybe what they should have done is, you know, they have like her tail on screen, and then they have her legs and her stomach, and then maybe then they should have cut to this shot, or had like a zoom in of her top half and her face, and then go to this to kind of show the whole thing, right? It's also a little weird that she doesn't move at all, right? Like, she's in the exact same pose. Again, I'm assuming this is from the game. Unfortunately, nobody has made a side-by-side comparison yet at the time of this recording. So again, comment section, feel free to go wild for those of you who know fighters better than I do. Regardless, though, this animation overall, super basic, nothing crazy. I think it's definitely the worst out of her like full kit of animation. She does open her eyes there at the end and kind of lift up her head, which I think it's okay, right? It's, again, it's just kind of nothing really to write home about, right? And obviously they have her open her mouth because, of course, the voice line is there, which is pretty cool, by the way, that obviously this is a unless this is an active skill and I misread or didn't read it properly on the Twitter details, but I think this is a voice transformation. Maybe this is an active skill. Again, you can let me know in the comments. I am so sorry, bro. Because I was sick last night, I literally went to bed before all this was announced, and then this morning I woke up and I was like, oh, okay, let me, like, vaguely look at everything. And so, your boy isn't in the know as much as the usual. But regardless, though, it doesn't change the fact of the actual animation that we're taking a look at. Alright, so... we now have her Majin 21 super attack, which I think is easily the best one that she has in her kit. I really, really like this one quite a bit. If we click on our screen here, first of all, it's nice that they kind of have her hair and her tail move a little bit in the beginning. By the way, very nice touch there for the Twitter preview. They've been using the clone Goku, because obviously, you know, that's kind of like... you know, obviously something from FIGHTERZ specifically. But they have 21 zoom forward, right, which I think is very, very fluid, right? This entire animation is super fluid. And again, this is, you know, ripped right out of FIGHTERZ in terms of this entire moveset that she has, right? The little spin and everything looks great, right? Especially in full motion. And I don't think that here, there is not a single spot that I would say, hey, there needs to be a couple more frames in between there, right? Everything is virtually perfect, honestly. I like as well for the tossing of the ki blast there, right? When she, you know, hits the enemy up and then obviously grabs the ki. They have a little bit of a flash to transition from her so she doesn't actually have to throw it and it's just an explosion. And I think in this particular instance, it works perfectly, right? You really have to kind of like look at these animations carefully when you're looking at how they do these white flashes to transition in between stuff, because sometimes it works really well, and ironically enough in the case of her transformation it doesn't work as well, but that looked really, really good. And then of course she goes back into a neutral pose and we have the card art appear again, and then we have 21 basically punch and kick into the enemy, which again looks really, really good. Super fluid, and I like this little transition as well between scenes, right? You have 21 zoom up, and even though she's at an angle when she's kind of leaving, right, it's believable enough that the camera just changed in between cuts to do the, you know, like the flip, basically, and then obviously kick down on the enemy, which looks really good. And again, this is a pretty cool transition, right? Obviously, instead of showing the full kick, what they do here is they have a little impact frame, obviously kind of implying that this is a kick, you know, like kicking down at the enemy. And then they transition into a little bit of like a far away shot, where then 21 is obviously kicking down before teleporting and doing this awesome slash, right? Obviously with the Keyblade. Again, I mean, you know, if it wasn't clear enough by this point, super attack ripped right out of FIGHTERZ with the funny Keyblade spin in a circle. Again, super well animated, right? Just the right amount of frames. Everything looks great. And this little animation here, too, of 21, really close to the screen is great. I love the motion blur effect they have on her hand, right? I guess the only thing with this is that I do kind of wish that they had one more frame or two in between her hand being here and here. But to be fair, I guess it's kind of a thing of like, oh, she's moving so quickly that her hand just got back there immediately. And I don't think in full motion it looks bad necessarily. But then obviously her hand pulls back again and then moves forward to then smack into the enemy. And again, this animation is super fluid, right? And I really, really like the effects that they have on this as well, right? There is not like a frame missing from this animation. This looks so nice. And I love the little smoke effect, right? I like the little electricity. And obviously a very good way to transition. They have another sort of like black and white impact frame. And then bam, obviously, you know, smacking into the energy smacking into the enemy with the energy effect, right? And then a very, very nice KO screen where obviously the explosion happens behind her and she's standing there all stanced up. That is going to be a gas KO screen, I'm not going to lie. That is pretty cool. I really, really like, by the way, the lighting effects on this for the entire time. That was something that I wanted to mention. Because obviously, right, when it comes to this animation, you know, you can see that, of course, the front of 21 is a little bit darker because, of course, the light is coming from behind her. So, and I really, really like this little effect that they kind of have on her here for the light kind of like, you know, engulfing the area. And it looks a little bit like shaded like that right before, obviously, the explosion happens. And you can actually see the lighting on her kind of moving a little bit with the explosion getting a little bit bigger, which is pretty cool. I love the little like red tint that they have on her as well. Yeah, I think that animation is easily her best one. They did a very, very good job with it. And then, of course, we have the active skill for 21. Now, this one, I'm going to be honest, it's not bad, but it kind of feels like that they put on an active skill because they wanted to have one on the unit. Because, like, the animation is alright. Like, her turning around, right? It's okay. There are a couple of frames there that you can see where the transition is a little bit awkward, right? From her arm, you know, kind of lifting up that far so quickly to when it actually gets up to her face, right? The turn, I guess, is okay because obviously they want to have her full face in view. But then it's so weird because it's like they have her hair kind of expand a little bit almost, and they transition from this to this. It just looks a little bit jarring, honestly. But then they have a little bit of rotoscoping with her face there. And then, of course, they have her talk a little bit for the active skill. It is nice to see that they still have her hair moving a little bit too. But they then cut to the shot from behind, which does look really good and is still consistent with the pose she was in before. And then, of course, we have this animation here, which I will say this is pretty fluid. I don't think there's really any complaints about this. I do like how they, you know, they kind of have her move her hand like that, but then they zoom in, right? And then immediately after that, they zoom out to transition in between. I do kind of wish that, you know, there was something a little bit more in between these two. But her lifting her hand up looks okay. And again, I do really like the kind of zoom in and out little meme that they did there. It looks good, and it's a lot better of a way to transition in between scenes, I feel. But yeah, then we have 21, obviously, have a Ki Blast above her head, which looks really, really good. I think that the energy looks good, and it's nice to see that there is some shading now on 21, because obviously the light is right above her. It's cool that the area kind of gets darker, right? And, again, Fighter's animation right here, right? I do kind of wish there was a frame in between this and this, because it is, again, a little bit jarring. But obviously, throwing it forward, that looks pretty good. You know, nothing too crazy, but it looks alright. And then it is nice that when they transition into the blast actually flying forward, you can see the 21 is already in the pose of basically like having whipped it forward already. I like the little air effects that they have and whatnot. Obviously, it collides with the ground. Very nice electricity. I like the dark electricity as well. And then, of course, bop right into the enemy, which they fade to white and, of course, show you the explosion from afar. And they do have her hair move again, which is nice. The explosion looks really good, too. But yeah, I think it's just a very basic active skill. It's nothing too crazy. Again, it's certainly not as fluid as her super attack animation. Again, it's definitely not the worst active skill that I've ever seen by any stretch of the imagination. But it's definitely not the best either. But with all of that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for today's animation analysis video. Hope you guys enjoy this one. Again, I apologize about my voice, but your boy is quite sick right now, but I still wanted to get this video out for all of you. And I hope you enjoy. Let me know what you think about 21's animations in the comments section below. Any of the questions that I asked in this video as well, feel free to answer in the comments as well. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video. And yeah, I'm really happy, honestly, that not only did we get an actual Dokkan Fest 21, because obviously the only 21 that we had up until this point was the free-to-play one and the like side banner unit, the STR one rather, that was obviously, you know, just put in the unfeatured pool. It's nice that they gave her one where she not only has some very nice looking animations, but obviously, you know, just giving her like a proper Dokkan Fest is really, really cool. So let me know what you think about her in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.